Balasi manulele olevao Bete talia siyo manao Inatatala mayalo fatu Na oya maya mailasi O utepa fasi ulangi O te fola fetalai Pe atafa Besangai Ete alofa moni ia te au Ina tatala maya lofa tu No ile ufi ai fe ile papa Tau mao tau sala Afai wa emusu Sau sefai mai Longo e tino le masia Eu finangalo tau sala Wata upu fai mangana Tele manava I leva ve atamai I fai pea ia tali tawane ai Fai va tamani io le fetalai Vafia sili e vafia vi Olo umana ole atori Mae tau anga fau Tau pe malafo atu Ne I e pe mai ua ole ma fau fau
Kia ora tātou. Okay. I beg your indulgence, ladies and gentlemen, if I can invite you all to slowly make your way over. Oh, it's me again. Warm greetings from the friendly isles. Whalawhalahi atu ki mtolosi, warm Pacific greetings, beautiful people of Aotearoa, New Zealand, and abroad, of course. May I invite you all to haere mai, nau mai, haere mai, hoki mai. Welcome to our PMA Whale. We are going to begin our program in probably about 5 miniti. Kere kere.
I was wondering, what is on your mind? I'm just waiting for you to tell me, baby. Even my bed, here they are, so I know I'm on your mind. Phone, get one more time. touch so very much that I need when you're around me. The way you make me feel, the way your love is real. Oh no, no, my darling, me, my darling. He touched my bed, so I know that I got you, baby. Oh, and now, the love is just the day I found you. Man, I do it my bed over. I'll love you over and over.
Pardon me, ladies and gentlemen. May I please ask you all to please move forward? Whakamole. It's okay. We're all health professionals here. Everyone's been vaccinated and everything's all good in the hood. So come forward and we will officially begin in 1 minute. You're doing so well. You're doing so well. Have your way.
Sale mafutanga ufenga sale ulanga I owe temana o ia iloa hoknetinga utelelava so abenatinga.
Kia ora tātou, ata mārie. Tāpu pia moe tolu tahai o tua ua whio iho tau lotolotonga. Ko ia whokuni o miivi o tā wau si ai pongi pongi whawho ofa koe ni. Tāpu pia moa kuini ngā wai hono e te pō, hono walu pia moe tangata whenua o Aotearoa. Mālo e tā mau e pongpongini. Whakalofalahi atu ki mo tolu osi. Halol keta and happy Solomon Islands Pidgin Language Week here in Aotearoa. Kia orana, iorana, aloha. And what's up? How are you all? What up? It is wonderful to join you all this morning. My name is John Pulu and I'm delighted. I'd like to acknowledge Sir Colin as well as our honourable ministers and their colleagues, medical colleagues, scholars and of course everyone else. Ladies and gentlemen, Madame, Monsieur, welcome to this launch of the report of the Sustainability and Resilience in Pacific Islands Health Systems. I was with the Pasifika Medical Association team yesterday, and I mentioned that we have all the medical knowledge here, but the real doctor is upstairs. Not on the next level, of course. I'm talking about God. I'm talking about God. Yeah, you know Jesus. So with that, we're going to open with a lotu, and I now invite Reverend Dr. Sione Vaka, who's going to come forward and begin Au polo kalama, au fono with a word of prayer. Malo au pito.
Malo John. I'll take a reading from the book of Philippines, chapter 4, verse 8 and 9 to guide us for the day today. The book of Philippines, chapter 4, verse 8 and 9, it says, Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. Let us pray. O tua maf me mau tamai whakaiwani a Fiona, pure whakarewelewa ko he universi ko iau mau iai. Mau whiawhia e hoa koe ni pau mau unu mai pa moe loto hanga maari e moe whawhtai ka te ko he ofa au fuato po ke whai. Father, we come in this very moment and say thank you to everything that you have done for us. We thank you for the opportunity and thank you for bringing us together here this morning. We have traveled from many parts of this earth and we come here to celebrate this important work. The apostle this morning is reminding us if there is such thing that is pure, if there is such thing that is noble, if there is such things that is worthy, we should take note of it and we should say thank you, glorify yourself, and celebrate it, Father. This morning we have this very important report that we're about to launch. We ask for your blessing, we ask for your guidance and wisdom to be with us and also with the many people that are behind this report. We ask all these things in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Malo pito, Reverend Sione, and I'll see you later at church. Ladies and gentlemen, matavu vale, ohana. I'm delighted to invite our first speaker right now. It's Professor Jemima Tiatia Siao. Jemima Tiatia Siao is a professor in Pacific Studies at Te Wananga or Waipapa School of Māori Studies and Pacific Studies. And she is the Pro-Vice Chancellor Pacific at Waipapa Taumatarau, the University of Auckland. She is of Samoan descent and specializes in the study, research and teaching of suicide prevention, postvention, mental health and well-being, youth development, Pacific Studies, health inequities, climate change and mental health well-being. Professor Jemima Tiatia Siao is responsible for implementing the university strategy regarding Pacific staff, students and communities. She plays a critical role in advising the Vice Chancellor and the senior leadership team on matters concerning Pacific peoples, communities and the broader Pacific region. Please put your hands together for Professor Jemima Tiatia Siao.
Malo lovely soifua mamalangi mama yokwe malo lelei halo kia ora na tatou katoa toa ni sambule vanaka whakalofalahi atu halo laketa mauri noia aloha malo ni tēnā koutou and warmest Pacific greetings. Distinguished guests, colleagues, fellow speakers, friends and family, on behalf of Waipapa Taumatarau, the University of Auckland, and our Vice Chancellor, Professor Dawn Freshwater, and the Office of the Pro-Vice Chancellor Pacific, I'd like to welcome you all. I'd like to acknowledge your presence and contributions, Michael Turnbull, and to you also, Professor Suaru Shirley of CAPRI. To our guests, the Honourable Jenny Salesa, representatives of CAPRI, and their partners, welcome. And malo apito to the Pacifica Medical Association group for hosting us in their beautiful whale. For the co-launching of Te Poutoko Kiwa and the Centre for Asia Pacific Resilience and Innovation, CAPRI's Sustainability and Resilience in Pacific Island Health Systems report. This report represents months of diligent international research efforts, careful analysis, and a deep commitment to advancing knowledge and understanding on Pacific matters, such as workforce development, climate change, environmental sustainability, population health, governance, and so much more, with a particular emphasis on health systems in the Pacific region, focusing on the Republic of the Marshall Islands, the Kingdom of Tonga, and the Republic of Vanuatu. I would like to express our congratulations to all who have contributed to the creation of this report. Our university's very own, Sir Colin Tukuitonga and Dr. Rowena Nashu, alongside co-authors Siale, Akuola, Emmy, Shutaro, and Caroline Field, as well as reviewers and content experts. From the researchers who gathered the data to the writers who distilled in it into a clear narrative, your hard work and dedication have brought us to this place. This report is not only a reflection of your expertise, but also of the collective efforts that brings us closer to our shared goals. To all who are here today, thank you for taking the time to join us. Your presence is a testament to your interest in the importance you place on a more prosperous Pacific. And I'm sure it'll be exciting to hear more today about the findings, recommendations, and insights that will help shape the conversations and the decisions that lie ahead. I encourage you all here to reflect on how the data and conclusions may impact your own work, your communities, and our broader shared goals. I consider that the discernments, all the discernments from this report, have the potential to inspire meaningful change, to ignite new ideas and foster collaborations that will lead to tangible improvements, particularly for the 3 Pacific nations highlighted. Now, without further ado, let the journey begin into the reason why we are all here today. I hope you find this report as informative and as inspiring as I have. Congratulations once again. Maloa pito, soifua maia manuia.
Yeah, whawhkai ke lava, Dr. Jemima Tia Siao. Ladies and gentlemen, we've now come to the keynote speaker, and he is Australia's 29th Prime Minister from 2015 until 2018. He's had an international career in law, business, and media before entering politics at 50 years. Globally, Mr. Malcolm Turnbull played a leading role in reviving the Trans-Pacific Partnership after the United States withdrew, striking deals with US President Obama and Trump to accept refugees who tried to arrive in Australia by boat. As a young lawyer, Mr. Turnbull successfully defended former MI15 agent Peter, the British government in 1986, the Spycatcher trial, before entering business, where he ran his own investment banking firm for a decade. He later joined Goldman Sachs as a partner in 1997. Before and after his political career, Mr. Turnbull has been a successful venture capitalist. He co-founded Oz Email Limited, the first Australian tech company listed on the NASDAQ. Since leaving politics, Mr. Turnbull has resumed his business career. He is a senior advisor to KKR and as an investor in and advisors to many Australian technology businesses. He is president of the International Hydropower Association, and Mr. Turnbull speaks and writes on a range of issues, including cybersecurity, geopolitics, and renewable energy. And he's also human. He's with us today. Man, too many successes here, Mr. Turnbull. Please welcome him, a round of applause. Mr. Malcolm Turnbull.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, I mean, normally I'd just be introduced as a colourful Sydney racing identity, so, which of course is a euphemism for something else in Sydney. Anyway, it's lovely to be here. I'm very honoured to be the chair of the International Advisory Council of CAPRI, which is, in this case, not a idyllic island in the Mediterranean, but in fact the Centre for Asia-Pacific Resilience and Innovation, based in Taipei. And its founder, Shirley Lin, is I was going to say an old friend of mine, but she's a young friend of mine of long standing, if you know what I mean. We were partners in Goldman Sachs more or less the same time, and during the COVID pandemic, it got Shirley involved in a project actually started by a couple of British politicians to have a global research exercise focused on resilience, and basically to do a couple of things. One of the things was to say, how's everyone coping with this COVID pandemic? Because every country in the world was being hit with it at exactly the same time. So it was a little bit like an exam, when you all line up and go into the examination hall, and the invigilator fixes you with a steely gaze and looks at a watch and says, right, you've got 3 hours, start writing now, and everyone's got to pass the test at the same time. Well, that's what happened with COVID. Every society in the world was hit with the same health challenge at more or less the same time. And how did we all cope with it? What went right, what went wrong? I mean, nobody got everything right. Some people, like Taiwan, for example, I think did one of the best performances of all countries in the world, actually, in managing it. But everyone got things right and wrong and so forth. So what do we learn from that? And this was out of this emerged CAPRI. And it's a real tribute to Shirley and her colleagues like Chang Chuan, sitting next to her here in the front row, and her Taiwanese colleagues who saw the role that they could play in continuing that work in focusing on resilience and collaboration across the region. Now, one of the wise things that is said about politics is that all politics is local. And, if any of you, as you know, Australia's a federal system. When you're running for federal parliament, if you're a pompous person and you go around, you knock on someone's door and they say, it's all very interesting, but, there's a crack in the pavement, or my garbage hasn't been collected. If you are a pompous prat, you will say, oh, that's really a matter for the local government. I'm running for the national parliament. If you actually want to get elected, which was always my focus, you will say, that is terrible. That is terrible. I am either going to pick up the garbage myself for you personally, or, as it happens, the mayor is my very good friend. I'm going to get him on the phone right now, and I'm going to get that crack in the pavement fixed, right? So politics is local. Politics is local. But that's a good thing. But the problem is that very often in politics and public policy, we don't pay enough attention to what people are doing in other jurisdictions, in other places. In business you do, really. I mean, most businesses are multinational, and even if you just got a single restaurant in one city, in one country, you will be paying attention to what the trends are in other parts of the world. So business is much more global. Politics and public policy tends to be far too local. And we don't pay enough attention to what's going on elsewhere. And I can say from my own country, from Australia, we are really guilty of it. I mean, we don't pay enough attention to what's happening in one state of Australia to another, let alone New Zealand. And many of you may have heard me say this before, but I've always been a huge fan of the way New Zealand tackles public policy problems. I think often New Zealand does things more efficiently than Australia does. Now, my great old mate John Key would always accept this compliment, naturally. He used to lap all that up, naturally. But he would, he would then say, yes, but we have to be more efficient because we don't have as much money to waste as you guys do. But still, there's a lot to learn. My point is there's a lot to learn. So this is, now, we live in a really diverse region here. You know, we're talking today about the Pacific islands and the Pacific generally, and the CAPRI study on health in 3 of those island communities, island nations. But you know, this is a big region. Whether we talk about the Pacific, you know, with big countries. I mean, Indonesia, largest country in ASEAN, you know, 4th largest population in the world. China itself, Japan, Taiwan, you know, Australia, New Zealand. Like, it's a big region, and we are all connected. And you know what? We don't talk to each other enough. We don't pay enough attention to each other, because we're all focused on the imperial capitals in Beijing and Washington. We're allowing ourselves to be like spokes going into hubs, and that's wrong. I mean, you know, when I used to talk about security a lot, I would say, we've got to find our security together. We've got to look at our security not just as a series of spokes going into hubs, but as a mesh, working together and learning from each other. And so this is the really critical role that CAPRI is able to do. And this is not just CAPRI, but other think tanks, and, you know, CAPRI is the only think tank focused on this region in health that I'm aware of. Certainly the only one based in Taiwan, that's for sure. But basically it is able to look at all these different places and say, well, they're doing this country's doing that, that's working, this country's doing that, that's not working, and you can compare. Because we're all trying to solve the same problems. You know, we're not, I mean, every country's got different stages of development, and they've all got differences, but we're more or less trying to solve the same problem. So collaboration and learning from each other is very important. You know, as I said, politics is local, so we're all a bit parochial. But boy, we've got to look outside of the parish to see what other people are doing. So that's what this report's focused on: Pacific Island health systems, say, in the 3 in RMI, Tonga and Vanuatu, as described earlier. Sir Colin Tukutonga has, there he is, good, great. So he has authored this with a great team. And I want to recognise the commitment of all the organisations that have contributed to this, including the Partnership for Health System Sustainability and Resilience, PHSSR, and to Poutoko Ora Akiwa, the Centre for Pacific and Global Health here at the University of Auckland. Now, this report sheds light on the pressing health challenges in the Pacific, where healthcare access, infrastructure, resilience face increasing pressure from natural disasters, non-communicable diseases, obesity is a big part of it, climate change, economic vulnerabilities. It's got a comprehensive analysis of those challenges and highlights the potential for innovative governance and collaboration to overcome them. And it's a testament to the power of partnership between local governments, NGOs, international organisations and the private sector. And the message is clear: resilience must be integrated into all components of the health system, from the beginning to the end. I mean, your health policy cannot just be the ambulance waiting at the bottom of the cliff. You know, you've got to get involved in all of these things from the start. You know, we were talking with our friend, the health minister from Tonga, who, of course, Siali contributed to this report before he was the health minister. So this is really interesting. So he's written this report. He's written this report with recommendations for government, urging governments to get going, you know. Don't be complacent, move it. Why can't you do more? Be brave. All of those things. And then he becomes part of the government. It's fantastic. I wonder if he'd known that was going to happen, whether he would. Might have put in a few lines like, you know, well, we do have to recognise the challenges that governments face, and, you know, complexities, budgetary difficulties, and so forth. Anyway, so that's what this is all about. So I want to, I am on this area, I am at best an enthusiast, I have an enthusiastic interest, but this is a room full of domain experts, specialists, and so that's who you are here to hear from. But I just want to congratulate Sir Colin and the team here at the University of Auckland, as well, of course, congratulate CAPRI, acknowledge the fantastic support that they've had from their colleagues in Taiwan, acknowledge the representative from Taiwan, here, Joanne Au, and thank her and her colleagues, and consul from Auckland, I should say. Thank you very much for all being here. And really, I'd launch the report. And also, can I just say, this report is on 3 Pacific Island nations, this particular one. But CAPRI has done similar reports on Japan, the Republic of Korea, Malaysia, Taiwan itself, of course, and Vietnam, and they're also very valuable pieces of work as well. We've all got so much to learn from each other. As I said, we've got to work together. This is all about collaboration and learning, and a bit of humility in the sense that we don't know the answers. You know, you've got to be. There's no shame in picking somebody else's brains. And I'll just conclude with one observation about public policy for anyone. Many of you are involved in it. It is very easy for people in politics and public policy to get wedded to a particular approach because they don't want to admit that it's wrong, right? And the media, of course, are very tough on that. Can be very, saying, can you guarantee this thing will work? One of the things, because I got into politics late in life, compared to most people, and I'd had a business career, I had a slightly different approach. So when I was asked a question like that, I would say, no, I will, for example, big innovation agenda I had at one point, I said, no, I guarantee not all of this will work. Some of it will work, I hope. Some of it won't work. The stuff that doesn't work, we will dump. The stuff that does work, we'll do more of. And if we see somebody addressing the same challenges more effectively, we will shamelessly plagiarise what they're doing. Now, you can do that in public policy. You shouldn't try that with intellectual property. You'll get into trouble with the legal profession. But this is what we've got to do. We've got to have open minds and recognise that everybody's having a crack at the same problems. And so be open-minded, be humble, be receptive, collaborative, and if we seek to help each other and learn from each other, and this is where CAPRI can play such a fantastic role as a kind of intellectual glue to bind us together and enable us to be stronger together, then we will have, a healthier Pacific, a healthier world. Thank you very much.
Malo Apito, Mr. Turnbull. We've also got a little thank you gift from the team. It's just a little report I put together on my way here. And also tips for your future breakdancing Australian squad for the next Olympics. Too soon. Absolutely too soon. But thank you, sir. I'll meet you at the dance floor. Ladies and gentlemen, Madame, Monsieur, we've now come to our next speaker, speaking on Forging a Resilient Asia-Pacific, Insights from PHSSR and CAPRI. Our next speaker is Professor Shirley Lin, who chairs the Center for Asia-Pacific Resilience and Innovation, CAPRI, an independent international think tank founded in Taipei to enhance global resilience and promote innovative policy through a comparative public policy research. She sits on the steering committee of the Partnership for Health System Sustainability and Resilience, or otherwise known as PHSSR, a cross-sector initiative with the World Economy Forum that collaborates across sectors and borders to build more resilient and sustainable health systems for the future. CAPRI serves as PHSSR's Asia-Pacific Research Hub. Professor Lin is a research professor at the Miller Center of Public Affairs at the University of Virginia, a non-resident senior fellow in the Foreign Policy and Program at Brookings, and adjunct professor at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. She also graduated cum laude from Harvard College and earned her master's and PhD from the Department of Politics and Public Administration at the University of Hong Kong. She retired as a partner at Goldman Sachs, where she leads the principal investment area for the Asia ex-Japan. A round of applause for Professor Shirley Lin. There we go. There we go.
Thank you very much. In addition to being short, it's always very difficult to follow Malcolm's footsteps to speak after him, but I am so delighted to be here. Actually, it's been over a year since Sir Colin met with all the other researchers in this first major project that CAPRI, since founding, has initiated under the World Economic Forum. And to be able to be here in person is really a dream come true. I'm Shirley Lin, founder of the Center for Asia-Pacific Resilience and Innovation and CAPRI USA, which was just founded in Delaware this year, and a member of the Global Steering Committee, as just was announced, for PHSSR, an acronym for Partnership for Health System Sustainability and Resilience. It's so beautiful here in Auckland, and yet, of course, when we started doing this project, we wanted to go beyond the discipline, and we wanted to focus on all sorts of issues that are important for the Pacific Island community. And thank you, Sir Colin and the team at University of Auckland. We arrived, 5 of us, from Taipei yesterday for the launch of this report. We are a non-governmental, nonpartisan, independent think tank, only established 2 years ago to enhance global resilience, as Malcolm said, and promote innovation. Innovation meaning innovative policy as well as innovation itself, by drawing on the experience of the Asia-Pacific region, which really should have a stronger voice. We do that through comparative public policy research that spans public health, transformative technologies, economic dynamism, and environmental sustainability. From our base in Taipei, CAPRI's mission is to amplify the Asia-Pacific voice as the world faces unprecedented challenges and uncertainties. To this end, I'm so glad that we're here today in the most diverse city in the Southern Hemisphere. Thank you, Representative O and Director General Chen from the Taiwan Economic and Cultural Office in New Zealand to join us. And thank you those in the room and those tuning in live stream from around the world, many from Europe, 5 in the morning, unlikely from parts of East Asia, but we hope they'll watch this recording. CAPRI was founded on the presumption that Malcolm and I discussed back in 2020. At the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, this presumption was that health, the economy, and environmental challenges should be considered together, not restricted by our thinking as experts in different silos and universities. I myself, having been in the private sector, became part of the academy, and then joined think tanks in the United States, began to think, why in Asia Pacific do we not have a more integrated effort to deal with the challenges that policymakers face? It was very, very painfully obvious that the health of our economies during COVID-19 depended on the health of our people and our natural environment. No region understands these connections better than the Pacific Island countries and territories, where resilience in health, climate, and economy all rely on each other. That is why CAPRI partnered with Sir Colin here and his collaborators, and thank you for so many of them being here, from throughout the Pacific region to propose a project that could bring the experiences and lessons from the region to the global stage. CAPRI has done just that as the Asia-Pacific hub of the PHSSR project. PHSSR project is a nonprofit global collaboration between academic, non-governmental, life sciences, healthcare, and business organizations with a unified goal to improve global health by building more sustainable and resilient health systems for the future. It works to achieve that goal through independent, policy-oriented research. PHSSR members include the London School of Economics, who started the framework, which we revise for the Asia-Pacific context, the WHO Foundation, the World Economic Forum, AstraZeneca, KPMG, Philips, and CAPRI. And many of them, their representatives are here today, flying into Auckland for today's meeting. And other organizations at the regional and national levels have also participated and contributed. It is active in over 30 countries, and the Pacific Island Report being launched today joins dozens of reports published to date on the sustainability and resilience of health systems worldwide. CAPRI has worked with leading experts and researchers over the last 2 years, not only here in Auckland, but also in Malaysia, South Korea, Singapore, and Taiwan, and now soon we are expanding into other countries in Southeast Asia to provide evidence-based policy recommendations that can serve as a springboard for engaging stakeholders in important conversations. CAPRI has also analyzed the country-level findings to draw lessons for the Asia-Pacific region, pulling together insights from those countries I just mentioned, plus previous reports done on Vietnam and Japan. This effort culminated in a summary report that some of you may have. We brought a few physical copies, but all of our research are open access. You can find them on our website, caprifoundation.org, including this Pacific Island Country Report, which we hope you will send to those who are interested in this work. The lessons and experiences from the region can support global policy discussions to build more sustainable and resilient health systems worldwide. We identify 4 key themes impacting the health systems of the Asia-Pacific. As Malcolm said, it was very important for us to promote work that is comparative but viewed at the regional and global level so we can learn from each other. So as part of that effort, we seek to have summary reports advising policymakers on common challenges and common, actually, best practice. The first thing we recognize is aging population, especially in the East and Southeast Asia. Several societies in Asia-Pacific, as you know, are super aged, with South Korea aging faster than any other high-income countries in the world. Declining birth rates are also raising fresh issues for the health systems of the region. Governments will need to invest in long-term care and more treatment of the non-communicable diseases, all paid for by a shrinking tax base. Some countries have piloted solutions. In Japan, the promotion of community-based integrated care systems has provided comprehensive and integrated care to elderly people in their communities. A similar system has been piloted in Korea since 2019, which can also be a model for other Asia-Pacific nations grappling with similar challenges. The second theme is the impact of climate change on health. Here it's clear that Pacific Islands are already bearing the brunt of both the health and economic impact of climate change. Changes in sea levels, weather patterns, natural hazards are already overwhelming communities' health infrastructure, food security, public health, and economic prosperity. Work has been underway for many years addressing these challenges. The 1995 Yatuda Declaration and Fiji's 2016 National Climate Change and Health Strategy Action Plan, both highlighted in the Pacific Island reports, represent pivotal steps towards promoting holistic well-being that consider environmental health. I'm sure we will hear more in today's panels. The third common theme is the rise of digital technology in health systems. And thank you, Philips, for being part of our effort in making comments and helping us with sources. The adoption of telemedicine and electronic medical records holds immense promise for addressing the region's healthcare challenges, including expanding access to care and improving patient outcomes. However, the widespread adoption of digital health is often restricted by infrastructure and capacity constraints, security and privacy concerns, and regulatory considerations. To this question, CAPRI has also done work with Brookings to look at how innovation was used to fight COVID-19 while protecting personal privacy. To unlock the potential of digital technology in health systems, South Korea and Japan are both developing medical information exchange systems to facilitate the sharing and access of electronic medical records among healthcare institutions. In Taiwan, the My Health Bank app stores personal health data, making access to medical records by patients and doctors more straightforward. Vietnam's public health portal provides patients information on drug prices and treatments so they can make better decisions about their health. The final theme was identified, was the prevalence of workforce shortages, probably the biggest problem of these issues. Lower middle income countries such as Vietnam and the Pacific Island countries often lack the requisite number of healthcare workers to meet basic healthcare needs. And we'll hear more about this challenge facing the Pacific Islands today. Meanwhile, higher income countries such as Japan and South Korea enjoy a very robust workforce, but still face challenges in providing comprehensive care, especially in the face of an aging population and increasing healthcare demand. Challenging work conditions and insufficient investment in training have resulted in high staff turnover. During the pandemic, governments implemented various initiatives to enhance work environments, including mental health counseling centers, like in South Korea, rest opportunities at local hotels, like in Vietnam, and several governments placed restrictions on working hours. The pandemic also saw the rise of task shifting to better leverage healthcare workers' skills during a crisis. This was the case in Malaysia, where assistant medical officers eased the workloads of physicians and nurses. Through this work for PHSSR, we have seen that common challenges require commitments not only by national governments, as Malcolm just said, but also from partnerships with the private sector and academia in the region and around the world. In conclusion, through cross-border and interdisciplinary collaboration through PHSSR, we have the opportunity to learn from one another and create health systems that can withstand future shocks. This is a unique opportunity to share our work in the Pacific region, and I'm so glad to have Sir Colin and CAPRI's network of senior fellows. In 2025, please look out for more research from CAPRI and PHSSR. You are all welcome to join us online or in person in Taipei on May 12, 2025 for our third annual forum, which will be focused on the theme, Shaping Landscapes Toward a Sustainable Future for Asia Pacific. Thank you very much.
A round of applause. That's actually just hand sanitizer in there that we put in a very fancy box to make look amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, ohana. I'm just going to migrate to the floor here while the team is preparing, because right now with all that information, I'm sure some of you need a little breather. I mean, for me, my brain's already filled with so much information. So right now, we're going to have a very wonderful performance. They're known as the Commerce or Pacifica. And this morning, they will perform a Siva Samoa, or a performance from our beautiful cousins from the shores of Samoa. I think they're ready. A round of applause. Another round of applause for Commerce or Pacifica. Me and my mobile microphone. Another round of applause for our wonderful Tamaitai Samoa, Fafkai. A wonderful performance there. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are just setting up for the next part of our Polokalama. And this morning, we're now going to move into a panel discussion. Now, this will be facilitated by Sir Colin Tukuitonga from the Rock of Polynesia. He is known as the Rock himself. Don't worry about Dwayne Johnson. Who is that? I only know Sir Colin. So this morning, I'm just going to briefly read a little bit of their bios. And before you leave, we're going to do an exam who's actually listening to me speaking. In the beninging of time. All right, lovely people. So first up, I'm going to introduce Sir Colin Whanotau Tukuitonga. KNZM is a Niue-born New Zealand doctor, public health academic, public policy expert and advocate for reducing health and inequalities of Māori and Pasifika people. He has held several positions in public health and government in Aotearoa, New Zealand, as well as internationally. He was appointed a Knight Companion of the New Zealand Order of Merit for services to Pacific and public health in 2022. Sir Colin Tukuitonga has held several high influential offices, including Director General of the Pacific Community, SPC, Commissioner and Coordinator for WHO in Geneva, Chief Executive of the Ministry for Pacific Islands Affairs, and also Director of Public Health, the Ministry of Health. He was also instrumental in establishing Pacific Language Weeks here in Aotearoa. Thank you to us, Sir Colin. And his home of Niue, he established the biannual Niue Culture and Arts Festival. Sir Colin is one of our most prominent Pacific figures in the health sector here in Aotearoa and globally. His voice was crucial in advocating for Pasifika during COVID crisis in Aotearoa, and he's been consistently vocal in pointing to inequities for Pasifika in the health system and pushing for policy to impact Pasifika in better ways. His current position at the University of Auckland, Associate Dean Pacific, Faculty of Medical and Health Sciences, Administration, Associate Professor, Population Health, and Director of the university's Research Centre for Pacific and Global Health. He is currently President of the New Zealand College of Public Health Medicine. A round of applause. Mā Kapisinga. Whakauilahi, whakauilahi. He's going to introduce the rest because I've run out of saliva. Just reading his many accomplishments. Did you want to leave any for us, Colin?
You could have saved yourself a lot of trouble and used the short version, JP. Whalawhalahi atu e le lifu e whare, tō matrenanga niue ne whalataha mai. Jemima has in fact done all the Pacific greetings, so I'll just keep it short and acknowledge you all. Thank you very much for being here. If you listen to national radio, it sounds like New Zealand could do with a report on resilience and innovation in the health system. Ashley will disagree with me. Anyway, look, fantastic to have you all here. And of course to welcome Malcolm, Turnbull, Shirley and the team from CAPRI. It's a pleasure that we've been able to have our colleagues from the region, given the performance just now and the flowers and everything, you'd be forgiven for thinking you're actually in the Pacific Islands. But it's delightful to welcome you all, and I also would now like to invite our panelists to the front. Firstly, the Honourable Shirley Akawola. Malo. The Honourable Akawola is the Minister of Health in Tonga, and as you heard earlier, he was helped craft the report on Tonga. And now he has to go home and implement it, and we'll hold him accountable. But welcome. For the longest time, Head of Health, Director General in Tonga, influential in Tonga. Tonga is done some great things, and we'll hear more shortly. And a lot of that under his watch as Director General, influential in Tonga, but also around the region and globally with the work of WHO. And we're delighted and honored to have you here, Minister. Thank you for coming. We have Emmy from way up north. She's made the long trip. Emmy Tatara is the head of the Pacific Islands Health Association based in Honolulu. But she's often reminded me that those of us who live and work in the South often forget our cousins in the North. So I made it a point to invite her, and she's made the long trip. She's just been at a board meeting of Pihoa in Micronesia, made the long trip to Christchurch and back here. So thank you, Emmy, for coming. It's always a pleasure to see you. And of course, Dr. Basil Leodoro from Vanuatu. Welcome, Basil. Was a surgeon, probably still is a surgeon, but he's head of a Helper One, a boat that visits the place, and we'll hear more from him. He was chief surgeon in Santos, I think, in Vanuatu, and we're pleased to have him here. I should make a couple of remarks. These good people are here in their own right as informed individuals. They're not here to represent their governments. So the reference to the Honourable Shirley is a joke. He's here because of his knowledge and wisdom to help the conversation. And Emmy, of course, has comprehensive knowledge about the challenges in the North. And Basil, obviously, on Vanuatu. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to invite them to make some brief remarks, and then I'm going to quiz them. And then after that, you can quiz them. I'm aware there are folk online. It might be a bit of a technical challenge, but the team will try and see if we can pick up some questions there as well. So that's what we're going to do. We'll start with the Honourable Siali Akawola. Some opening remarks from you, Minister. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Colin, and again, I'd like to acknowledge the other distinguished guests, Sir Malcolm Turnbull and your colleagues from CAPRI. Of course, my two panelists here. Firstly, I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to be part of this panel. And I know that there are a lot of public health experts in this room. So I'm not going to try to know it all. As what Colin has said, we are here to contribute what we can. And I guess most importantly for me is to learn and hear what others are saying. But as I guess as a health manager for a long time in the Pacific, facing challenges, I think you have to like your job, to be resilient for a long time. I was going to suggest to John Pulu, when he said he had run out of saliva, he needs a betel nut. Chew a betel nut from Papua New Guinea or Solomons. But I think it has been, to me, it has been a lot of people before me. I think that's something I always take and which motivates me a lot. There has been champions before me in the health field in Tonga, not only in Tonga, but the region, people that I learn from. It motivates me, and I think that's important when it comes to being a leader and to remain being a health champion for what, you know, without giving up. And I recognize what the former Prime Minister of Australia said about politics being local. And I think it reminds me of how I learned policy. Somebody mentioned about policy as 3 Ps. You have a problem, you create a policy, and you have politics of implementing. So I think, I totally agree when you start thinking that implementation, motivation is local. because that's what matters to people. And I think when you are working in the health sector, you have to address what is needed by people right there on the spot. I mean, if you start talking about trying to be too smart and trying to talk above their head, I mean, you won't get anywhere. I think that's something that, for me, actually I was trained as a pathologist. I learned my management through the laboratory services. I kind of liked developing my corporate skills in managing people, and I kind of liked managing people. From there, went on to become a medical superintendent and then CEO for many years. But I think it all came down from trying to create solutions that is a win-win to everyone. You have to create things that are that motivates your customer, your client, your patient, your society to believe you, to follow you. You know, I guess that's something we all learn as we go through and as we mature within our whatever group we are leading. So I think Colin has been a great motivator for us in the region too. You know, we look at him and he's there. You know, he looks smart the way he talks. So it motivates us out there in the islands when we see him often, and it's something that encourages us. Like when Amy comes from Honolulu, she comes with the Bihoa people voice, the Pacific Medical Association. I know you just had your meeting. That's a great motivation for us from the islands. So I hope you keep up the good work.
Malo,
thank you.
Peter, Minister, thank you. We'll come back to you in a minute. Thank you very much. Amy, a view from the north.
Thank you so much, Sir Colin. Sir Colin is also very humble. He actually used to be my boss when I was at the SBC in New Caledonia, and then later in Pohnpei, FSM, Federated States of Micronesia, when we were opening up the SBC office here. Sir Colin was my boss, so when he told me that he would like me to come and join this really great meeting, 2 meetings actually here in New Zealand, the PMA meeting in Christchurch as well as the CAPRI meeting here, I was like, absolutely. So thank you so much, Sir Colin, for the invitation and the continued recognition of the need to work as a blue continent, you know, as a Pacific region, as Pacifica people across all the Pacific. I think that message, you know, continues to resonate. So for my speak today, I really wanted to hone in on that, and I know Honorable Turnbull also mentioned this, that we do see a north-south divide, and there really is. Even though we talk a lot about the need to be the Pacific Blue Continent, to look at health security across the Asia-Pacific region, in practice, from my own perspective and my own observations, it doesn't always happen. And so I've made a really concerted effort, you know, as Executive Director for PHOA, working up in the Northern Pacific, but having worked in the Southern Pacific, in New Caledonia, Fiji, Vanuatu, Solomons, Kiribati, Nauru, I felt that there was an affinity that we all have. And so in my position up north, I've always tried to advocate for a strong relationship and alignment with all the discussions that are happening across the Pacific region, through the heads of health, through the Pacific Ministers of Health, through the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat, and a number of other initiatives that we are discussing and talking about very, very acute, chronic, systemic problems that we all share in common. I was really honored to join the PMA meeting for the first time yesterday in Christchurch. And what really struck me was when there was this beautiful sharing and testimonials of public health, of working with Pacifica people here in New Zealand, and all the challenges that we share, I literally was able to say, well, I could just literally transpose the Marshall Islands, Federated States of Micronesia, Palau, you know, American Samoa into some of that as well. And I think that was a powerful message that we continue and should continue to dialogue on how we can work together as Pacific people across the Blue Continent. And then where can we then discuss with our partners, CAPRI, WHOs, Pacific community, our UN affiliates, USAID, you name it, the long line list of partners, where can then we all work together collaboratively in partnership? Now, saying that, it's an easy word to say, partnerships. It's an easy word to say, relationships. But in practice, it's not. There's a lot of politics that go behind all that. There's a lot of vested interests that sort of define some of that and also rate limit where there may be some flexibilities to have those conversations. But I think today, from this report, I'm really hoping that it can be a spark to enable a more strategic vision and approach to then building that platform and building that framework for those dialogue to happen. So I just wanted to say thank you so much to CAPRI for supporting this work. It's not new. We've had these conversations many times over the years, but I think post-COVID and the new political environments that we're finding ourselves in across the world, that we really need to question the status quo. We need to question why, after all this investment in partnerships and across the region, that we still find ourselves some of the highest prevalence of NCDs in the world. Up in the north, Marshall Islands, the highest prevalence for TB in the world. Why? And so I think I, like Dr. Siale here, I come from a place of humbleness. I come from a place of trying to figure it out and problem solve as we go. And I'm really glad that we have a lot of folks here who have different thoughts, different experiences, and that we can continue to commit to share to see how we can work together and problem solve together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amy. We'll come back to you in a minute. Now it's my pleasure to invite Basil to make his opening remarks. Let me remind people, he's not here to represent the government of Vanuatu. He can't anyway. He's a bit on the... But anyway, it's lovely to have you, Basil. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sir Colin, and good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. It's certainly an honor and a pleasure to be here with the Honorable Minister, with Emmy and Sir Colin on stage. And also I'd like to acknowledge the former Prime Minister, Honorable Malcolm Turnbull, and Prof. Syria and your team, and the CAPRI team who are here. It was lovely to meet you all last night. Don't let the color of my beard fool you. I am the least experienced on this panel this morning. So I guess that is, I'm going to play it to my advantage and come at this discussion from a personal level. And I have the least experience in policy and politics. So that may work against me in this discussion, but I think it's a strength. So we'll get right into it. I thought I might just make a few quick remarks and maybe start off in line with what Mr. Turnbull has mentioned about COVID. All of us going through COVID. And I wanted to acknowledge Sir Ashley Bloomfield, who is in the audience tonight. Dr. Bloomfield, your leadership and commitment in New Zealand's response to the COVID-19 pandemic inspired many of us on a personal level. And it was a privilege to follow your remarks and your journey in the media and be able to communicate with your team. Thank you very much for that. It helped us in Vanuatu. The Pacifica Medical Association as well, to the leadership of Dr. Kiki and Debbie and the team at PMA, their support also helped us to prepare, to coordinate our quarantine and repatriation operations, and to the Ministry of Health and the WHO, we were able to keep COVID out of Vanuatu, I think the longest for any Pacific Island country or any country in the world for that matter. And just coming back to the politics, of course, it was a politician who broke the COVID quarantine and introduced COVID-19 into the general population. So there you go. That's where we are. But I wanted to just make a few quick remarks and remind us all in the audience that Being practical in our approaches to strengthening resilience in health systems, I think is tantamount to where we are heading. But we also need to recognize the reality of navigating political, policy, and cultural spaces in the Pacific setting. The Pacific Islands is heavy on the cultural component. So what does that look like for those of us who are in the field, for those of us who are in the operational side of things? Well, that means building relationships and strengthening partnerships that can withstand health shocks, such as the threats of pandemic, natural disasters, and day-to-day challenges. I'm not sure if any of you have ever experienced it, but Vanuatu will be going through the 5th national general elections in 3 years. So that's another political storm we are navigating at the moment, and that comes with its complications. But I want to just say that the solutions to sustainability and resilience do exist in the Pacific, and the CAPRI team have highlighted where we should be looking to. And hopefully today I'll have a few minutes to talk about Helper One, which is a marine vessel based in Vanuatu that is one of the innovative examples. And in conclusion, I think local solutions and local leadership is critical to the success of policy and implementing partnerships that can address the sustainability and resilience of Pacific Island health systems. So thank you, Sir Colin, for allowing me to make those first remarks.
Thank you, Basil. Thanks very much. Yes, it's another report, and I can imagine people who read lots of reports will say, this is another report, and what's new, what's different. I'd like to guide the conversation. Doctors spend a lot of time making a diagnosis. Lots and lots of consideration over a diagnosis, and then often we don't offer a solution, or it's stopped short. So what I would like us to do today is focus on some interventions that might be helpful. So we'll start with the Honourable Akawola. Tonga has, there's a lot in the report on the loss of trained nurses and doctors out of the region. Tonga is one place where you've been successful in retaining your doctors. It's all relative, of course, but I remember your predecessor, Lord Tangi, saying Tonga has trained enough doctors if they were all at home, but they're in New Zealand and Australia and elsewhere. But in the last little while, you've been able to keep them at home. Do you want to share with the audience what you did and what you thought made the difference in terms of keeping your health workers, your doctors, your nurses in the kingdom?
Thank you, Colin, I can try. But actually, it's a very interesting question because to me, I think it's quite I'll give you I'll try to go through how, I guess, we end up with a pretty admirable situation where we have doctors and nurses staying in spite of the challenges. And I think that's, to me as a manager, I find it quite humbling to think that there are people who are still, they have opportunities to move, but they prefer to stay home. And I think they are personal decisions, but for us to realize that we have people like that, it's very humbling as a health leader. I can only try and reflect back on how we came through trying to manage the health system in Tonga. And I think I'd like to acknowledge the support, especially by the Australian government. We worked with the Australian government through the DFID Tonga Health Support Program since 1999. That's a very long program to support health systems. And we started off by supporting training our leaders on corporate functions in terms of managing human resources, finances, governance, service delivery, all the components of health services. Trying to train people to understand how you plan, how you look at risk, how you do a SWOT analysis, looking at situation, strength, weakness, opportunities and threats. Get it into their system early. So this had been done a long time ago. So we had a group of people who were nurses and doctors, including myself, which I was very fortunate. Actually, that's how I got attracted to working as a people's person and managing. Were through these trainings. I didn't go and do a master's in public administration or something like that, or business administration, MBA. We did it in Tonga. And I think it brought home that there are opportunities out there to motivate people that they would not have been taught anywhere. And it came back at we found out Tonga has a very strong cultural heritage, very strong culture of loyalty, things like being proud of your heritage. There was a strong affiliation with the royal family in the area of health. When we go back through history, the royal family in Tonga had been advocates for training Tongans to become doctors. And actually, the first doctors in Tonga were the first overseas scholarship students that ever went out of the country and attended Fiji School of Medicine in the 1920s. That was a rich history. We suddenly realized that this is something you need to tell the young doctors, the young nurses, all the time. You need to motivate. And some of these guys were still around. When I returned and started working in the 1980s in Tonga, some of them were still operating. I remember assisting one of our old surgeons in the 1986. He would have been in his 70s. He did a gastrectomy. That's the operation, removing part of in Tonga. And then he did a prostatectomy. And I just came out of university witnessing some professors doing similar procedures, and I could say he was doing a better job. He never went and did any postgraduate surgical training. My apology to Basil, I know he's a surgeon. No disrespect to the surgical field. But that's something we told people all the time, And I think, initially I wanted to be a surgeon, then I decided to be a pathologist. Because I was telling people, I prefer my patients not to talk bad. But I got sick of talking to dead people, so now I became a politician.
Thank you.
No disrespect to Malcolm.
Thank you, Minister. My take on your intervention is appealing to your cultural
Yes.
Pacificness, Tongan heritage, and so on. I know you also bumped up salaries in Tonga with much difficulty. So clearly, recruiting, supporting health workers, critical issue in the region. So thank you. Emmy, the other big issue in the report is financing. Generally, people say you should spend about 5% of GDP on healthcare, because if you spend less than that, it's difficult to provide basic stuff. Many in the island spend just hover below 5%. It is amazing what they are able to achieve with quite a small, modest contribution. Fiji, for example, generally speaking, below 5%, but they have fantastic basic coverage. Palau has, but financing is an issue for the region. And comparatively speaking, the North spends quite a lot more on health. So I have two questions for you. One is, the North spends more on health, but there is also very similar to the folk in the south who spend less. Why is that? Secondly, I understand that Palau has an interesting innovation on, is it Palau Fund? You might comment on that if you can. Thank you. You didn't think you were coming here for a holiday, did you?
I think I need at least a couple of days to be able to answer those questions. I'll try my best to try and provide a synopsis, but let me just give a little bit of a context first before I answer. As many of you know, 3 of the islands in the Northern Pacific have what they call a Compact of Free Association with the United States. And that compact is essentially a development assistance package that looks at health and education as the 2 primary areas of support, including capital infrastructure and economic development support. In return, the United States has defense security rights over their economic, exclusive economic zones, et cetera. Now, one thing that folks often don't quite really see in those compacts of free association, or COFA for short, is that the concept and the framework of how those are designed, even though they're in consultation with the respective countries, Marshall Islands, Federated States of Micronesia, FSM, and Palau, they're still based on US federal legislative statutory language, which means a lot of the inherent design of, for example, health programming or health support is still within the framework of how the United States would address their health systems development efforts in the United States. And I'm talking specifically the continental United States, from California to New York, et cetera. So understanding sort of that little piece, you can already see that there's going to be a little bit of, or actually quite a lot of, square pegs trying to fit into round holes, from both a policy framework, from both a financing sort of perspective. So it's not always a good fit. So yes, there's per capita, there's a lot of monies coming through. But that monies and how those monies are being utilized and some of the conditionalities that come with it don't often come with an understanding of A, development in a low resource setting environment. 2, a lot of them are linked to statutory regulatory language within the domestic federal government of the United States. So when we're looking at Marshall Islands and Palau and Federated States of Micronesia, they're not based, there's some loosely based concepts around the United States, sort of policy frameworks, et cetera. But, Marshall Islands, where I'm from, it's a constitutional parliamentary system with a very strong input of our traditional leaders, our Council of Viroj, that look at guiding policies around land use and land rights and customary practices. So, but that's not how the United States operates, right? So there's already a disconnect inbuilt into a lot of the way that the COFAs are being implemented in the islands. So in practice, what that means is there are ways of doing business and ways of reporting from the United States side, which is a challenge for the islands to be able to really enact and implement locally. So that includes accountability measures for how monies are being utilized, where it's allocated, how much is being allocated. There are also some issues around accountabilities for meeting certain standards. So a good example, and I'm not going to quote exact amounts because I can't remember, but the Marshall Islands has been wanting to build a hospital for many, many years, a new hospital, under the previous compact. Fast forward into the new compact, that hospital still hasn't been built, and that money is still committed and obligated to build a hospital. Why? Because there are certain issues around the blueprints and the design of the hospital that weren't quite meeting some of the standards that were required from a federal side, right? So the question moving forward is like, well, okay, that's understood, and we understand why there needs to be those standards. However, we also have to take the practical, pragmatic approach, as Dr. Lindora mentioned, that at some point, We can't be waiting 5, 8 years to build a hospital when we know people are suffering. We know that there are unnecessary deaths. We know that the current hospital systems that we have massive issues around infection prevention control, have massive issues around quality, care and comprehensive care and significant acute shortages of workforce across the board, be it doctors, nurses, biomeds, to housekeepers, to our laboratorians, to our pharmacists. Across the healthcare sector, we have shortages across the board. So why then? So I think I'm trying to just explain that there's a framework here of operations and a disconnect in expectations that is not by design or by intent, but by default has created these difficulties in implementation. To your second point, though, is Palau situation. Palau does have a compact to PHSSR association, and they've been able to really think very strategically about how they use those monies. And unlike our mine FSM, they're already trying to wean themselves off of the compact to PHSSR association. And fair enough, Palau actually has a really good tourism base, so they've been able to rely on that revenue coming in more so than RMI and FSM. And that's really helped them a lot. But they also recognize that they need to do more. The Compact of Free Association cannot be the sole and be all of how they finance their education and healthcare systems, for example. So starting in around about 2014, 15, 16, and started really implementing in 2016 onwards, they established a social insurance scheme where people can contribute into the social insurance scheme, and that there is amounts of money that are set aside to be reinvested. And over time, that amount has actually increased to the point where they're now looking at dividends coming out of those investments, and they're reinvesting it into the healthcare system. So they've been able to subsidize some of the costs of healthcare delivery. They've been able to invest in, for example, NCDs, which is really difficult from a legislative perspective, the NCD policies and legislation. As some of you might know, the United States government, with federal funding, really shy away from anything that has to do with advocacy and lobbying. So NCD policy, unfortunately, sort of falls in that little gray area. So there's not a lot of financing from the federal government in the United States that actually supports those types of initiatives. Hence where then the social insurance scheme has been able to then provide some financing in those particular areas that wouldn't traditionally be easily covered under US federal funding. I could go on more.
Yeah, thanks, Emmy. We could learn more about the Palau experience. I think financing health services in the region is a critical issue, and doing more of the same will get us the same results. So clearly a conversation to have. So the Palau experience is one. I'm sure there are others that we can learn from. Basil, Helper One is an interesting innovation in Vanuatu. You want to talk to us a little bit more about Helper One and the mobile boat that you have delivering services in your country?
Thank you, Colin. And if you're interested to learn more, there is a website for Respond Global, and of course social media for Helper One. But essentially it's a logistics platform. Helper One is a marine vessel that carries 54 people based in and registered in Vanuatu. It is registered as a health and humanitarian vessel, and so we provide daily provincial support to taking services and programs and priority activities out into rural communities in very remote areas. The ship actually was inspired, if you can call it that, by the COVID vaccination rollout. We wanted to have a way of getting COVID vaccination throughout Vanuatu. At that time it was 2 doses for everyone, 3 months, and we wanted to vaccinate the whole country and open up our borders so that we can get back into the economically positive space. And so Helper One is a product of that need or that gap that we saw. Respond Global is the parent company, which means it's a commercial entity that's based in Brisbane, but has a humanitarian arm, which is the Helper One ship based in Vanuatu. And being an NGO in Vanuatu means we are constantly in fundraising mode. So as John would say, if you have a fat wallet, please come and see me after this. But what we've been able to achieve, and I'll give you some examples, which is in the population that we've served in the last 12 months, is over 50% of Vanuatu's population, 182,000 people. We've been able to provide immunization coverage to 85% of the rural population. Now, Vanuatu is 75% rural population. We have 2 big urban centers, or 3 big urban centers, but in the rural population where roads, airports don't reach and there's no jetty or wharves, that's where Helper One is the most effective, and we focus on those areas. And we've been able to vaccinate 85% of the children under 5 in those remote areas. And we're hoping to publish some of that work in medical journals, in peer-reviewed medical journals, so that it becomes information for wider audience. We've been able to, as part of the disaster response, so from last year we had 3 cyclones smashing into Vanuatu. Judy and Kevin in March, and Lola in October, which was the earliest or second earliest cyclone recorded in the Southern Hemisphere. And that meant that Helper One was deployed for 14 weeks out of the 52 weeks last year. And that's always been the purpose of the vessel. Dr. Ian Norton, who is the managing director, made it very clear in the beginning, in partnerships with the Ministry of Health and other departments, we made it very clear that if it was the right thing to do and if it was practical, then we would do it. And being an NGO, we're not bound by military red tape, we're not bound by a business incentive, it's not a commercial vessel. And so it's a new model, but we have an oxygen plant on board and we refill oxygen in all the remote areas. We have desalinators, so in cyclone response, we give fresh water back into the communities. We have chainsaw response teams on board. We have green energy and solar technicians that light up clinics in remote areas and churches and communities that have been without power for 5 years or more. And these are church and Ministry of Health clinics and facilities. And so I think the practical nature of policies, as the Honourable Minister has mentioned, when it comes to navigating that political space, we have to keep in mind the question, is it practical and is it the right thing to do? And if so, then we should do it. And Helper One is not just a Vanuatu vessel. It is available for regional deployment because we ensure that the standards that we keep are same as Australia and New Zealand, allowing us to be able to sail to other countries to provide care. And we're really grateful in the near future that DFAT has now come on board to support Helper One, so we're really grateful for that for 18 months, and we look forward to future partnerships. But just a final word on making policy into action. I think with the low spending on health in the national budgets, I think public-private, to add a few more P's to today's conversation, public-private partnership, and Helper One being an innovative example, public-private partnership in the Pacific Islands is going to be key. And the trust that the communities begin to have when they see you regularly and they receive the care that they want, it builds their trust, and now they are very demanding of the services in Helper One. And I see Audrey and her team in the audience. Wherever we go, they ask for dental. Where's the dentist? And if the dentist isn't on board, why didn't you come with a dentist? They ask for the eye team, so ophthalmology and eye services. Why didn't you come with the eye nurse? You came last time and this time? And then they ask for ear, nose, and throat. That's what they ask for. We go with other public health programs, but the demand is certainly there in our most remote communities. I know it's true for the rest of the Pacific. And I think Helper One is an innovative example that in my personal experience, I wish that it was rolled out in the Pacific to allow our people to get access to services. Thanks, Sir Colin.
Thank you, Basil. We have some microphones in the audience, and in the little time that we have left, I will invite you to, not a sermon, but a question. So if there are any questions, there's a microphone. Sir, thank you.
Thank you for the talk, Sioto Whahoe ki Bokanga koto. Just a question about the theme of strategic partnerships and the very real reality that it's either we keep our professionals in the islands or they go abroad. I just wanted to ask a question around, is there a third way? Because for us Tongans, majority of us live outside of Tonga now, as many of us know. I believe it's similar for Marshall Islands, and I know there's a big portion of Nevans in Australia. Hundreds and thousands, if not over 1 million of us live abroad in these big American, Australian and New Zealand cities. How do we engage our many doctors, policymakers in those cities to care for our region? How do we engage those without a bit of a third way? Koia pe malo.
Actually, I think Colin would have answered that better. But I think joining the Pacifica Medical Association would be a start, because at the moment we are working closely with them, and they are using diaspora clinicians, nurses, and sending over like people like Sone Vaka and those. We have a strong connection with mental health people here. We have a partnership with St. John of God for Tonga. St. John of God in Ballarat in Australia Hospital. It has been going on since 1992. And they do source diaspora health service providers in Australia. They come to Tonga on a regular basis, fairly regular basis as part of that. So I think there are various mechanisms available. I mean, that's my short.
I just wanted to build on what the Honourable Minister has already said, and I know 100% that there is a personal loyalty elements in each and every Pacific Islander who is not in the Pacific. I think the message from me is that stay where you are, specialize in your field, and that little aching in your heart to serve your country, there are ways to do that. PMA, through PMA is one of them. There are other partners who are coming into the Pacific to help. And today we're gathered here because there's a report launched because of a partner who has looked at the Pacific and given us some ideas, some policy of where to go and the best way forward. So wherever you are, specialize in your field, know it really well, and then come and see how you can contribute back. There is a personal loyalty there that I know is in every Pacific Islander who is living overseas. And you can make a difference. In the Pacific, we always have an open hand policy where we accept help when it's practical, when it's the right thing to do.
I'm going to take a maybe slightly different tact in terms of trying to understand what are the root causes of why folks are leaving our islands. And it's not just about the healthcare system and lack of pay and all of that. But I also hark back to our education systems, the environments within which we live, and the impacts of climate change, and some of the realities of climate change refugees that we're really seeing. And again, from the Marshall Islands, I mean, myself, when I go out during the king tides, it's not so much the waves coming over the land, it's actually the salt water seeping in from underneath, right underneath your house, coming up. It's much more insidious than what folks kind of conceptualize in the social media. It's more of a quiet undercurrent of a disaster that is looming, and I think people really are afraid of that. And they're not just only thinking about themselves, but they're thinking about their future generations and taking the opportunity now to try and establish another home. You know, they will always come back. I think with a lot of my family that have resided, you know, United States, I have family here in New Zealand, I have family also in Japan and Australia. And every single one at a certain point in their lives say, well, I want to go back and I want to die back home, right? So I think, you know, there's other push-outs that we also need to consider, and we do need to think about government reform, holistic government reforms, where we're really talking about it's not only about the structure of our healthcare systems and what can retain and how we can recruit and retain our own people, but also understanding what are the other push-outs within our countries that require other areas of government reform, be it within our education sector, within our housing sector, within our, you know, climate change adaptation, so that people feel secure and safe and can have a safe livelihood back home. The second point I guess I wanted to make is with PHOA, the organization that I work with, we've made a very concerted effort during COVID, for example, to identify our folks who are residing in the US, Fiji, elsewhere, and actively recruited them to then be deployed back home to work with our folks in the islands. And I have found that a certain percentage of them then say, wow, I actually can contribute something. I can actually do something for my people. And of all of those folks that we deployed, you know, we brought them from Arkansas, we brought them from elsewhere, all Marshallese coming to the islands, a good percentage of them ended up just staying because they recognize that actually I have value and I can actually give back to my country. And I think sometimes we don't often see that part of why people want to contribute to the islands, because they feel valued, they feel that they can actually do something very meaningful. And we haven't really incorporated that too much, I think, into the way that we do business within the healthcare sector.
Thank you, Amy. I saw your hand, etc., but I'm not going to allow you to ask a question. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. We'll come to you in a minute. The migration of trained healthcare workers is a global phenomenon. First point. Second point, bonding and trying to restrict them to stay at home is potentially a breach of their human rights, and it's ineffective anyway. We have to be more creative, and I've talked often about circulation. Do a week at home, do a month, those kinds of things that don't restrict people. The other thing to do is that Basil has offered good advice about get yourself as good as you can be in the field that you have chosen, and then attach yourself to some mechanism that enables you to contribute as much as you can that fits your family circumstances. The idea that we can lock people in and bolt them to their island homes is archaic and ineffective. We have to be much more innovative and creative about how we enable the diaspora to contribute. Sorry, Basil.
I just wanted to add that we are the ones responsible for that perception, that if you leave the country or you are away, you cannot give back to the Pacific and contribute. We're the ones we're responsible for. So we need to get rid of that mentality and look to what Sir Colin is highlighting here, that you can contribute. Yeah, absolutely.
Seta.
Question to Siale, Dr. Siale. You talked about loyalty. How resilient is that in the Kingdom of Tonga?
I think you know the answer. I said.
The minister said you know the answer to that.
It's called mate mafa'atong or something. What is it?
Yeah, you just have to look at the rugby league team. I think it has also its economic benefit too. You know, we talk about the budget for government, and we know that in Tonga, that was part of how we stood up to the economic impact of COVID, is because of the remittances. And actually, ADB and World Bank predicted a very negative economic outcome for Tonga. in the Pacific Islands, when we had the COVID, they said that, you know, things are going to dive and GDP was going to, but the remittances proved them wrong. And I think that's the resilience of loyalty. You know, why people still send money, although it's for their family, but that's the bulk of the income that eventually paid the revenue for government. So GDP in the report, if you can read the report, I mean, I think at 2021 it was about 43% of GDP remittances. So that signifies the loyalty, I guess.
A little anecdote for you. People have published that the Tongan nurses in Australia can be away from home for decades and still contribute remittances home. The general experience is the longer you're away from home, the less you give. Tongan nurses, on the other hand, defy the kind of general convention. So that says something about loyalty. We'll hear from Emmy. We'll take one more question, and that's probably about it for us today. Emmy?
Thank you so much. I just want to hark back to some of the conversations we've had in the Pacific Heads of Health and ministerial meetings. And that is, we have capabilities and capacities within the Pacific region that we're not tapping very well. We do have cardiologists, just not many of them, and maybe not in all countries. We do have pediatric nurses. They're not many of them, and they're not everywhere. So the question is, how can we build a framework of enabling what we call, and the word was regional public goods, meaning if there are capabilities in certain islands and there are capacities and technical expertise, how can we build a structure that is committed, that is supported, that is robust, that enables that sharing of expertise between islands, across the region. We do that a little bit already, just ad hoc. So for example, Marshall Islands was without a surgeon for nearly 6 months. So they reached out to their neighbor FSM and said, hey, could we borrow one of your surgeons? Because we have all these issues that we need to backlog of surgeries that need to be done. And out of the goodness of his own personal heart, he said, yes, sure. So he spent about 6 months in the Marshalls, doing surgery. During COVID, we were sharing test kits across each other. There were times when one island was out of reagents for a certain particular test for COVID, and sent a really quick email over to the lab folks over there and said, hey, do you happen to just have any extra reagents somewhere that we could use, or near expiring that you'd like to get your hands off of? Can we have them? So we do that in the Pacific just on a regular basis. But why can't we then discuss actually doing that in a more structured, built through consensus across the region, to really look at leveraging the resources that we already have in the Pacific, but which we're not leveraging. So I think it's to make a point.
Thanks, Emmy. I guess the message from that little interaction is, if you keep doing what we've always done, we're not going to get anything different, and we need to be a lot more imaginative, creative, and use the talent and the resources that exist. Sorry, folks, we have opportunity for one more. Chris?
Thanks, Sir Colin. I'm an interventional cardiologist, and I've worked out of a small little island down in Christchurch, actually. I went away off to Sydney, worked in a hospital in Sydney, and we spent a lot of time actually going out to the Northern Territory for Aboriginal health, assessing rheumatic heart disease, and brought them back to the city, brought them back, operated, and so on and so forth. I was quite surprised when Basil mentioned everyone but cardiology. I was a little bit left out, to say the least.
But we'll share the love.
Yeah,
Chris.
thank you. One thing I'm surprised about, though, is that no one's mentioned technology. One thing that we've established that I'm quite proud of is that we've actually used a New Zealand company for echo assessment. We're feeding the AI. We're developing a point of care so that visiting medical teams can obviously treat a patient, but start to develop some autonomy and self-management for the islands themselves. So what we're hoping for is that we can have point-of-care echoes that are uploaded immediately to, for example, a cardiologist in another area, so that we can give the teams immediate input, advice and treatment options. And I think that's something that's really changed in the last 10 years. We can now upload echoes directly to a cell phone if you've got internet access. It's really changed the way we manage people compared to the way we were doing it in the Northern Territory out of Sydney. I just appreciate what your thoughts would be in relation
thanks,
to that.
Chris. Basil, you want to respond to that?
Thanks, Dr. Chris. I forgot to mention that 2 days ago, for the last 2 days, we've been hearing about rheumatic heart disease and pediatric cardiology until our brains are full. So my question to them was, why aren't you guys getting on the boat with us? Because there is a practical aspect to the discussion about screening and early identification, early detection. The other second point I wanted to make was telehealth is on the front view all the time, and we see it. Education system in Vanuatu is moving slowly towards that, connecting up all the schools. We now have Starlink in Vanuatu, so if anyone has links to Elon Musk, please send him our way. We would love to see digital health and telehealth set up in all of our locations for the benefits that you've rightly mentioned. And the Pacific is now very easy to be connected by technology, and I think that is a key innovation that we need to seriously look at as well. Minister.
Thank you, Basil. Minister?
Yeah, just to support what Basil is saying, I think for Tonga we do have e-health. We are developing that, and it's still a work in progress, but we are already utilizing it for not only for the hospital information system, for digitized radiology. And I know what you're talking about. I think they're looking into that area. We are using it for telepathology. We have slides that are scanned and reviewed by colleagues at Australia. And we also have one of the goals is to monitor the capacity of community-based hospital health centers in terms of their ability to implement our package of essential health services. And I think you heard about, if you read about the report, about the need to have strong maintenance. And one of the monitoring is to monitor infrastructure, manpower, supplies, and services provided to the communities. So I think that's something we want to strengthen to ensure that there is a prompt awareness and we respond immediately to those gaps. So that's, I think, something with the DigiHealth that we want to build a bit more. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Perhaps a last word from Amy.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very loaded question, and similar to Vanuatu and Tonga, yes, the Northern Pacific have invested quite heavily in both telemedicine and telehealth. One of the things, there's two things I think that we still need quite a lot of conversation about. One is cybersecurity. It's an area that has been very much in the IT world, but which health has not necessarily been invited to be part of that conversation around cybersecurity. That's a really big issue. Palau, for example, got hacked not too long ago, and there was a lot of issues around that. So I think the vulnerability around cybersecurity for the Pacific region needs to be discussed within the health sector with our IT colleagues and other partners in this particular area. So that's one. The second one, I think, is licensure. A lot of the folks that we work with through our telemedicine or telehealth platforms, a lot of them are folks that are at universities or they're people that are volunteering their time and their effort. We really haven't thought about what is a true investment that we would need to bring into this, because we're going to need to pay for our providers. We're going to need to pay for their time. Is it going to be real time? Is it going to be asynchronous, right? So if we're looking at, for example, the telepathology is coordinated with the University of Tokyo. But if you have a particular scenario where you need real-time information, how do you work through that if you're talking across the globe? So we really need to kind of think about the structure of asynchronous versus synchronous sort of telehealth telemedicine platforms and what's really practical in the Pacific region. And my last one, going back to the licensure. And this is, I think, particular for some of our islands that are, for example, adhering to federal regulations from, let's say, Australia, New Zealand, or the United States, that there are some requirements that have to be met with respect to licensure. And so how do you talk about cross-border licensure processes and requirements? And I'd like to pause it back to the regional approach, and this was discussed many years ago when I was at SBC about could there be a discussion on sort of a minimum standard for licensure and certification that will allow for cross-border practice more easily rather than having to go through every single island individually and across the board. How can we make those processes more efficient and more streamlined across the region? So I think a lot of those topics have come up in the telehealth, telemedicine sphere, which we still need a lot more work on. Thank you.
Thanks, Emmy. I'm sorry, folks, that's all the time we have for this. So can I ask you to thank the Honourable Shirley Akaola, Emmy Tutaro, and Dr. Basil Lodoro for sharing their knowledge with us. And if you haven't read the report, there will be an exam at some point. So we'll know who read it and who hasn't. I know Scott from Phillips has made a good progress, haven't you, Scott? So look, thank you very much, everyone.
Another round of applause for our panel. Thank you so much, Sir Colin Tukuitonga. I think you have a future in talk shows. Perhaps instead of Dr. Oz or Dr. Phil, it's Dr. T. Malo Alpito. Whakauilahi maha ki Makapisinga. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, Madame, Monsieur, we're going to take another little break now, where we're going to have another performance. And this morning, we're going to take you now to Fiji. So, nā maramaki nā turanga, Nisam Bulavinaka and Yan Ravinaka to you. We're going to have a team here from the University of Auckland, and I'm told they are the University of Auckland Fijian Students Association. They thought very long and hard about their name, so oh, let's just go with the University of Auckland. So please join me in welcoming our Vuvale from Viti. Toso Viti.
Oh! Rongosaka nawe kangu Bosana e mai o tumbuni Salu salu aba amalolo mesa mai Damu mesa ta ito oningiri na walu mesa Sita 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 di mesa Sita 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 di mesa So wirita italeani Mesa so wiri mesa so wiri mesa so wiri ta italiani Isa oile ina va sarabangiri manita udo o tamata ausa o dana va sarabanga una e muri mengai madala Ngauna e muri mengai madala Isa oile ina va sarabangiri manita udo o tamata ausa o dana va Ngauna e muri mengai madala Ngauna e muri mengai madala
E bungana isema mai na vitoka itua Usoni mia usai wala ni ngaula Rabitika na kaulo ela mani malua na bunda mai vanra Ewa matua na bosa ya laya Ewa lule makamu kotoya Eia saia
Yo, Vinaka. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the University of Auckland Fijian Students Association, Vinaka, and Sotatale, Nisa Modemanda. That's why they're so good at the rugby sevens, eh? See, now I've become a Fijian right now. We have to reconnect with the report. Vinaka Vakalevu, Mr. Rambuka. That's why I've got a mustache, so I can look like Sitiveni Rambuka. But, oh, yeah. That was also part of their performance. Vinaka Vakalevu to our students from the University of Auckland. But we're now going to move on to our next presentation, which is on the vulnerable health infrastructure in the Pacific Islands. May I invite Dr. Eileen Natuzzi to come forward. Dr. Natuzzi is a US-based physician who has worked on health capacity building in the Solomon Islands for 20 years. She currently serves as Solomon Islands country coordinator for the Australia-New Zealand Gastrointestinal International Training Association, or ANZGITA, partnership with the National Referral Hospital, NRH, in Honiara at the Guadalcanal, where together with the doctors and nurses at the NRH established the first endoscopy service for the country. ANZGITA has assisted 12 Pacific Island countries in establishing endoscopic services. Dr. Natuzzi is affiliated with the Centre for Australia, New Zealand and Pacific Island Studies in the Walsh School of Foreign Services over in Georgetown University, been there, where her focus is on health and diplomacy. She is a US speaker for the Department of State's Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs. Dr. Natuzzi's main focus is on the strengthening under-resourced Pacific Islands health systems by addressing health system infrastructure, workforce, education, supply chain issues, and establishing regional centres of medical specialty care. I hope you're all listening, because we're absolutely going to test you after this. Got some fun facts later on. She actively advocates for the establishment of medical education exchanges between the US medical universities and Pacific Island health systems, in addition to safe and environmentally smart health systems infrastructure development. Dr. Natuzzi has published a number of policy papers on health development, as well as editorials on issues to geopolitical events in the Hill, the Diplomat, Dev Policy, Lowy Interpreter, Griffith University of Pacific Outlook and Global Health Governance, CFR, Think Global Health, CSIS, and Oceanic Currents, in addition to publishing in medical journals. Her most recent paper, co-authored with Catherine Paek at the Center of Strategic and International Studies, outlines how the US can assist in improving health systems throughout the Pacific Islands. The winning lotto numbers for tonight is, oh, sorry. Please welcome Dr. Eileen Natuzzi.
Good morning. This is Dr. Eileen Natuzzi, coming to you from San Diego, California. I want to thank you very much for allowing me to participate in this meeting. I'm really quite humbled. Give me a moment. I want to set up my screen share so I can share some slides with you. Okay. Today I want to talk about vulnerable health infrastructure and kind of in a bigger picture for health systems, how to move forward towards implementation. I know this is a topic that Sir Colin and I have talked about, and it's a big topic when it comes to health aid. In this talk, I'm going to briefly describe vulnerable hospitals in the Pacific Islands.
To also hear from Sir Ashley Bloomfield very soon. I'm just trying to buy time with this. It's what we do in radio. It's called ad-lib. But also, I'd like to acknowledge Sa Maori Coffee, who's here with us. If you are in need of your caffeine hit for the afternoon, we will have some available for you there. There we go. Wonderful.
Good morning. Good morning. This is Dr. Eileen Natuzzi, coming to you from San Diego, California. I want to much for allowing me to participate in this meeting. I'm really quite humbled. Give me a moment. I want to set up my screen share so I can share some slides with you. Okay. Today I want to talk about vulnerable health infrastructure and kind of in a bigger picture for health systems, how to move forward towards implementation. I know this is a topic that Sir Colin and I have talked about, and it's a big topic when it comes to health aid. In this talk, I'm going to briefly describe vulnerable hospitals in the Pacific Islands, include the estimated percentage of the population at risk of losing their hospital, give you some examples of some wins, hospitals that are in the works, delays and failures as far as dealing and addressing vulnerable hospitals. Showing you an example of PAHO's safe and smart hospital that's located in the British Virgin Islands. And then, ask the question, why addressing vulnerable hospitals is not happening, and list a few possibilities. And then I'd like to discuss implementation problems in health that I'm working on in the US affiliated Pacific Islands, because I think it's applicable to other Pacific Island countries. Vulnerable hospitals and the population at risk, these two graphs, the graph on the left shows you the number of hospitals that are located within 300 meters of a hydrologic threat, less than 10 meters elevation above sea level. And basically 56% of hospitals in the Pacific Islands are vulnerable to damage from sea level rise, storm surge, cyclones, etc. The graph on the right-hand side shows you the percentage of the population that's served by hospitals that are located in less than 300 meters from a hydrologic threat. And basically, taking that collectively, 63% of the population in the Pacific is at risk of losing their hospital. This is a slide that an associate of mine, Dr. Subhashini Taylor, generated for a publication that she did. And it basically shows the percentage of all health facilities. So that's our hospitals, our clinics, our dispensaries that are located within 500 meters of the coastline. So she was a bit more generous than I was. Essentially, what she found is 62% of all health infrastructure is at risk for damage or loss in the assessment that she did. I want to show you the first example of what I would call a win as far as relocating, implementation and relocation of a hospital electively. And this is Princess Fusapala Hospital on Lafuka in Tonga. It's a 22-bed hospital, has a catchment of 6,700 people, and it's located 709 meters from the coastline at an elevation of 18 meters. And you can see it's right sort of smack in the middle of the atoll, Lafuka Atoll or island. The old hospital you can see on the lower left-hand side. And if you move over to the GIS map on the right-hand side, you can see mapped out where damage occurred during the Honga Haiapia submarine volcanic eruption and subsequent tsunami. The area where the original hospital was located was severely compromised and flooded, but the new hospital was able to function with the exception of some ash, but otherwise had no tsunami impact whatsoever. So this was a win in that the decision was made by Tonga to relocate this hospital electively, and it served itself well. This is Palau National Hospital located in Palau, and this is an in-progress vulnerable hospital being addressed. The hospital is 75 beds. It has a catchment of 19,000 people. It's located 15 meters from the coastline at 1 meter elevation. it is the key here is that this hospital is connected by a number of causeways that were built during World War II and require a lot of work. And if one of those causeways goes down during a significant storm, the hospital basically could be inaccessible for people living on other islands within Palau. There's currently a working group looking at where to relocate the hospital and what will be built as the new portion of the hospital, or as the new hospital. And so this is a work in progress. The National Referral Hospital in Solomon Islands is sort of a vulnerable hospital that's stalled. This is the largest vulnerable hospital. It's 380 beds. It has a catchment of over 700,000 people, essentially the population of Solomon Islands. It's located 11 meters from the coastline, 140 meters from the Matanakau River, and it's at an elevation of a little less than 2 meters. It's constantly evacuated due to storm surge, floods, and some tsunami alerts. And it's not uncommon just for the hospital to get flooding from heavy rain. It had a lot of work was done to relocate this hospital. A new location was found, a lot of design elements, some cost analysis was done, but that has essentially fallen apart. And what you can see on the photo on the left is just to the right of the orange roof buildings, there is a building being built, and that is the building that is shown in the picture on the right-hand side. That is the Comprehensive Medical Center that is being built by China. This building is being built on the same vulnerable campus as the National Referral Hospital. And so it's kind of a stalled, vulnerable hospital approach at this point. And then this last hospital is basically the only hospital for Niue. It's essentially satisfies the definition of insanity, building the same hospital over and over again in the same location. The original hospital was built in the 1960s, and it was up on a cliff, a sandstone cliff. It was destroyed by a cyclone in 1990s and rebuilt in the same vulnerable location. Then it was destroyed again in 2004. Unfortunately, what ended up happening is they built a new hospital inland and uphill. But for 2 years, the people of the country received their care in hospital tents, as opposed to had they electively chosen to move the hospital from a clearly demonstrated vulnerable location, that could have been avoided. I want to show you this hospital. Excuse me. And this is an example of Paho's Safe and Smart Hospital in use. This is Peebles Hospital, located in Tortola, British Virgin Islands. It's a 44-bed hospital. It serves 24,000 people. And it is located in what's known as Hurricane Alley. That is because there could be as many as 12 Category 5 hurricanes that move through the Caribbean Atlantic interface. This hospital was renovated for $100 million US, and there was a lot of kind of anger, frustration over how much it cost. However, the hospital ended up showing its worth in that it survived unscathed 2 Category 5 hurricanes within 1 month of each other. The only damage to the hospital was some cracked windows, but otherwise it was fully operational, where most of the buildings surrounding it were actually severely damaged. So Paho's Safe and Smart Hospital program is a good program in that it addresses protection from vulnerability, natural disasters, etc. But it also makes hospitals more efficient, and so that they're more environmentally appropriate to where they're located. And I think that this is one model that could be really looked at, one program that could be really looked at in the Pacific Islands. So what are the limitations to implementing safe and smart hospitals in the Pacific Islands, or just getting them renovated or relocated? Part of it is failure of governments and stakeholders to prioritize renovations or relocations until damage occurs. Then they're more expensive and they lose the use of that hospital. The other is an attitude that some government and development partners may have that hospitals are big ticket items and they're not going to spend the money on it. Well, hospitals in the United States and Australia and New Zealand may be big ticket items, but that's not really what we see in the Pacific. They tend to be smaller and not as not multi-billion-dollar investments. Climate change adaptation resilience funding and including loss and damage is limited. I mean, adaptation is way underfunded, and that's what most Pacific Island governments would be relying on to fund their vulnerable infrastructure. Funding should be based upon hospital vulnerability that takes into account not just the location, but also the population that that hospital serves. If it's the only hospital for a country and it's vulnerable, it gets a higher score. Then the final thing is there are geotechnical challenges that are unique to the Pacific Islands. Are there unexploded ordinances that need to be cleared? Caves, tunnels, available land use laws that need to be overcome, and other ecological variables that need to be overcome. I want to sort of shift gears a little bit here, and I want to talk a little bit about some of this work that I'm doing with members of Congress in preparation for the upcoming congressional session. Our government has changed. There's a big push for more efficiency. I started this work before the election because to me, I think our health aid and development is very inefficient. What I wanted to look at is why is it that the US affiliated Pacific Islands are not achieving universal health coverage or achieving the type of health system that they need to take care of their citizens? And I started by looking at some congressional hearings. In 1984, there was a US congressional hearing that discussed health in the Pacific Islands. At that time, they were called the Trust Territories. And you can see under the column for the 1984 congressional hearing what the emphasis was, what the issues that were identified. In 1998, the Department of Health and Human Services contracted the Institute of Medicine to do a report on what is needed for Pacific Island health in the US affiliated Pacific Islands. And again, you can see the same things that were listed in the first column. Chronic diseases come in, absolutely appropriate since chronic diseases have become such a significant problem. Health research and data comes in as a new topic. And then some recommendations on how to streamline the interface between US affiliated Pacific Islands and the US government. In 2004, Congress held yet another hearing that was on disparities in health in the Pacific Islands. And again, you see the same things listed over and over and over again from the Institute of Medicine report and going all the way back to the 1984 congressional hearing. What this, and then in the far right column, I put in some of the areas that CAPRI identified as issues in the Pacific Islands for health. And we see the same thing over and over and over again. And basically, what this tells you is the implementation process is not happening. If we're seeing the same problems repeated over and over and over again in official documents, like congressional hearings, like the Institute of Medicine report, like CAPRI's report. And it tells us that something's wrong in the implementation process. And so in looking at how health programs and health funding grants are distributed in the US affiliated Pacific Islands, what I found is anyone working in a Ministry of Health or Department of Health in Palau, American Samoa, etc., has to deal with this many agencies. Money for health in the territories in the freely associated states comes from this many agencies. That means applications, that means regulatory requirements for reporting, if there is grants given. The system is ridiculously complex at the US government, US affiliated Pacific Island interface. And this is something that I'm working on trying to change through our congressional representatives that I'm working with. Essentially, there needs to be a trust fund that all of these agencies put their money in. And two councils, one from the US government, one from the US affiliated Pacific Islands, come together, similar to the way a sector-wide assistance program works. And the money is distributed based on what the need is. I had a chance to attend, and let me just kind of run through really quickly some current data. Here are the ratios of nurses and doctors to 1,000 people in the population. And you can see most of the Pacific Island countries, their ratios are below the minimum requirement for WHO. That's what the red line represents. And then I think this is probably the most important bit of data that tells me that implementation isn't quite getting to where it needs to be implemented. This is what I call a heat map. And along the left-hand side is the name of all the different Pacific Island countries. Along the top are programs or diseases. And the color of the boxes basically corresponds to how well a country is doing in achieving universal health coverage in addressing that program or that disease. The bluer the box, the better they're doing. The redder the box, the worse they're doing. And so if you look at the childhood health, in particular immunizations, the Pacific Islands are doing quite well. There's a lot of blue, there's a lot of green. But if you shift over to the right and you look at cancers and you look at ischemic heart disease and you look at kidney disease, there's a lot of red, and it means that the Pacific Islands are struggling to achieve that. And that comes down to what are their governments doing and what are development partners doing to assist in implementing the programs that they need. One of the things that I found really profound when I presented some of this data to the PHOA executive board was the response that I got is that the system is complex, but also we are given programmatic programs that are specific for what you outlined, but they aren't necessarily what we need. And that there's too much primary prevention and not enough secondary and tertiary prevention. There needs to be treatment in addition to a strong influence on prevention. And I think that we need to start sort of thinking about how is that interface? Do we need something that's more like a sector-wide assistance program? Certainly, I believe that that's what we need in the U.S. in our dealings with the U.S. affiliated Pacific Islands. I look at the Solomon Islands, and in Solomon Islands, basically, there have been 3 Chinese medical teams that have spent a year each embedded at the National Referral Hospital, trained to do cardiac procedures, renal procedures and dialysis, and urologic procedures. They will then move those doctors into that comprehensive medical center that China's building on its vulnerable location, but they will move them in there and they will adopt subspecialty care. There is no reason why the U.S. government, in its relationship with the U.S. affiliated Pacific Islands, shouldn't be doing the same. And so, I'm going to kind of close with this slide that has a number of questions on it that I think is really important for thinking about what's happening with implementation. What's needed to improve healthcare implementation in the Pacific is the first one. And our government's underfunding and why. Do current funding and grant support systems work? Is the application process for grants and funding complicated and time-consuming? Is the regulatory reporting requirement time-consuming and complicated? And are the programs that are offered what is needed or what the donor or development partner needs to give? And I think that's probably the most important point. I don't know whether this slide could be kept up on the screen. I'm hoping that I can join you to kind of chat and discuss some of this and hear your thoughts on what I presented. I do want to again thank you very much for allowing me to participate in this discussion, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Applause for Dr. Eileen Natuzzi. Malo Apito, Dr. Natuzzi joining us from overseas. We're going to just continue on with our Polokalama, and our final speaker for his closing remarks. In fact, every time I see him, I'm hoping that he's not going to put New Zealand to another lockdown or alert level. So I'm very afraid of him when I see him up on a stage. I'm delighted to invite onto the stage for his closing remarks, Dr. or Sir Ashley Bloomfield, who has 25 years experience in public health, policy and health leadership, including at the WHO in Geneva. He was New Zealand's Director General of Health from 2018 until July 2022 and led the country's health response to the COVID-19 pandemic. He was appointed a Knights Companion of the New Zealand Order of Merit, KNZM, in 2023's New Year's Honours for services to public health. Dr. Bloomfield is now a professor at the University of Auckland's School of Population Health and interim chief executive at Environmental Science and Research. A round of applause for Sir Ashley Bloomfield.
Well, kia ora koutou katoa. No, this is not a COVID-19 announcement, JB. Don't worry about that. But there are other announcements about COVID today. I hope the report of the first leg of the inquiry is going to be released. It's going to the Minister today, and we've heard a little bit from Tony Blakely. So we will get their view on whether the lockdowns were justified and whether vaccine mandates were justified and so on. But just to rewind to 2019, I think it was very interesting to hear from Malcolm and Shirley that actually the genesis of CAPRI was during the COVID pandemic. And as Malcolm described, every country was facing that very big challenge simultaneously. So there was like a natural experiment happening. And there was huge value. There was huge value in watching what was happening around the globe. COVID responses, if we look at them, emphasize the value of learning from others. That is, being curious. Curiosity is such an important value. And of being agile, that rapid cycle of learn, of review, learn, adjust. And it was the countries that were able to do that, to look globally and see what was happening, both what to do and what not to do. They were the countries that did well. And I dare say the biggest cluster of successful responses was actually in the Pacific. And I'm talking around the Pacific Rim as well, including Taiwan, including Australia, New Zealand, and of course, our Pacific countries spread across the Pacific Ocean. One of the critical elements of success during COVID too, and indeed the success in solving those challenging, those wicked public policy issues that all countries face, is great leadership. And yes, resources help, infrastructure helps, although as we found out through COVID, you can have a lot of resources, you can have all the infrastructure, but if you haven't got good leadership, it can be for naught. Leadership is a team sport. Leadership's about collective action, it's not about individuals. And this is absolutely the way to solve these challenging perennial policy issues, including health system resilience, but also just the challenges of running effective health systems. It's a global challenge. And of course, the answer has to be working together. Leadership is a team sport. Now, as Malcolm alluded to, we also, he made this comment, but it's one that's really struck me, and it was really apparent during COVID. We need to give our politicians actually more space to, and of course, they also need to be courageous enough to say things like, we don't know, or we've changed our mind because we have better information or better evidence, or, and this is the hardest one, this didn't go very well. It didn't go as we expected. And this is how we're going to learn from this. This is how we're going to change our approach. And we will come back and be open about what we find and what we're going to do. It's very hard for politicians to do this because there's no political mileage in doing it. Because the next question you get from the media is, when are you going to resign? If you say any of those things. Now, I'm not a politician, but I got that question a few times during COVID, especially from Mike Hosking, I might say. Only 3 times. But the point is, even when the media are asking these questions, and when Mike Hosking was saying, are you going to resign, and even when he told me he didn't think much of my efforts, he did say, at least you front it up. And of course, that's what it's about, is fronting up. That's leadership. So the important thing is doing that, fronting up, being prepared to change our minds, to learn, to be honest, doesn't undermine trust. Actually, it can build it. It can build it. People are very discerning. If we're honest, if we're reliable, if we're competent, that is, we come with good data, and we're prepared to front up and answer questions and debate the issues. Now, it may be a long while before we give our politicians space to do this, but we can exemplify this ourselves. We can do this. We don't need to have all the answers. In fact, none of us has all the answers ourselves. And we're much more likely to find solutions if we listen and reflect and are curious, as COVID illustrated. And we should learn from this lesson. Actually, the most successful leaders in times of crisis, and just in the everyday challenging and VUCA world that we live in, the most successful leaders are those who lead with humility rather than hubris. And you've heard the word humble several times here today. I'll put it to you, why are humble leaders more effective and especially the best? They're not necessarily the most attractive. They're not the big man leader who seems to be on the rise at the moment. But the leader who leads with humility is the leader you want when it's challenging, because they are open to learning from others. They listen and take advice. They build teams. They reflect and learn and adjust and innovate to keep improving and getting better and more equitable outcomes for the people that they serve. Those are the leaders we need. They're the leaders we need to be. So, back to the report, just to close things off. I think it's a timely report. I'm looking forward to reading it, Colin. When you give me a copy, that'll be great. It'll be a timely reminder. It's a timely reminder of the need for and the value of listening to and learning from each other. And that's why we're here today. It's an opportunity for us to connect, to develop and strengthen the relationships that underpin teamwork and success. So, congratulations to all those involved in the report, to all those involved in organising today's event, to you for all coming. We're not quite finished yet, because I think we get an opportunity to mingle and have something to eat. I look forward to watching the next steps, including finding out from other Pacific countries what we can learn from them. Malo pito. Have a great day.
Malo apito, Sir Ashley Bloomfield. Thank you so much, sir. Bloomfield is also a Tongan surname, so we're going to claim him as ours. I mean, look at him. He's Tongan, can't you tell? And my goodness, you look very relaxed now. Look at you, young man. Anyway, turn off Sir Colin's microphone right now. He said he's too skinny, he can't be Tongan. Colin, how could you? Malo apito, Sir Ashley Bloomfield. That wraps up our program this morning, but we will remain in lockdown in here because we're going to network. We're going to go into alert level eating. So we're going to continue networking in Talanoa, and once again, thank you very much to our special guests, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, Matanivu Vale, Malo Aupito. We've got Yes, we've got a little gift there for you, Sir Ashley. It's some gloves and masks from the very first lockdown, because we believe in vintage. But may I invite Whamole More Pe Whaiwhekau, Sione Waka, Whamole More Mai Mua, to bless our mea tokoni, and then after that we will continue our networking. Malo apito Whaiwhekau.
Malo John. Tolot e kere wata whamalo, whafta i kuna whataha alo. Hoa koen ko alo ofa tata pe a Fiona. Ma whanga tua ko te pire teu teu. Tāpua ki ang moia, ka iloa e Minister Amba mo weiki. Ma mau ma uia whamalo hea mau sino whaingai whatongia ki a Fiona. Ko ringai men was ko isko alga mo whamo ui. Amen.
All right, lovely people, we have some refreshments here and continue our discussions in Talanoa. Me taki maata. Mahalo nui. The presenters and speakers to come forward. We're going to take a group photograph, please. Kere kere, vosota. Can I please invite all the Fijian, can I please invite all the speakers to come forward on the stage? Kere kere.
Remember